Débora González. She's studying pharmacology at the Autonomous University of Barcelona. She's a member of ICEERS. She has published numerous research papers about ayahuasca and other psychedelics. And she's presenting here original data from an ongoing study, which is a partnership between ICEERS and the Beckley Foundation. This research findings have not been presented anywhere else, so that's exciting. It's first-hand information for us. And I'm very happy to welcome Débora. Thank you.
Here, yes. The death of a loved one is one of the most painful experiences that all of us will face at some point of our life. And even though grief is a nearly universal experience, death remains a taboo in our society. For this reason, when we lost a loved one, our family and friends won't know how to best support us, stimulating us to focus on positivity and the things we enjoyed, instead of holding a space for us to connect with our pain. Several scientific studies have recommended not to do psychotherapy during the first 6 months because it could have a negative impact in our natural way to process the grief. Only when the grief exceeds 6 months could be considered as a complicated grief disorder, a new diagnosis that have been included for first time in 2013 in the DSM-5. But as a consequence, there is a pathologization of the process. And today, most part of the society is non-religious, and our materialistic culture doesn't offer many answers to the existential questions that emerge when we face death. So often, the griever is in a state of maximum vulnerability, feeling alone. Good ayahuasca, the vine of death, the vine of the soul, be a useful tool for grief therapy? This is a question that has moved me as a researcher during the last 4 years. On September of 2015, we had the privilege to start a research project at a place near the Nanay River in the Peruvian rainforest, where almost every night is possible to listen to the shamanic icaros of the maestras, accompanied by an orchestra of insects and frogs. This place is called the Temple of the Way of Light and is one of the larger ayahuasca centers of Iquitos, with more than 800 visitors per year from more than 55 different countries. This study is a collaboration between ICEERS and the Beckley Foundation and is focused on a broader question that is, could ayahuasca, used in a traditional shamanic context, improve the quality of life of Western people? To answer this question, we set the following objectives: to assess the quality of life and psychological well-being in a sample of healthy individuals, and to assess the quality of life and the severity of the psychopathological symptoms in a sample suffering grief, post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, and anxiety. And beyond these main objectives, we wanted to look at the psychological mechanism underlying these potential improvements, and also to assess the potential risk of ayahuasca use and the personality profile of the participants. I don't want to spend a lot of time explaining all the questionnaires that we use in the healthy sample, but here in this slide you can see the questionnaires that we use. And in those suffering emotional symptoms, we used a specific scale to assess grief, post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, and anxiety, and a battery of common questionnaires for all the groups to assess quality of life, general psychopathology, and also experimental avoidance and decentering as potential abilities for emotional regulation, and also the potential risk of ayahuasca use, and we included the neophyte factor inventory in order to put in relation our outcomes with the personality profile of the participants. Well, to do this, we use an online data collection system in the cloud, and we conduct the first and the second assessment 2 months and 50 days before arrival to the Temple of the Way of Light. And given that the temple holds retreat between 9 and 13 days, where they take ayahuasca between 5 and 8 times, we conduct the third assessment 50 days after the retreat. In this way, we have a period of 45 days between the comparative assessment that allows us to assess the ayahuasca effects in this context and reduce the time-dependent bias. Finally, we included a 3, 6, and 12-month follow-up assessment in order to see the evolution of our outcomes over time. Well, this study is ongoing, and this is the actual state of the current state of the data collection. We will enroll participants until the end of the year, but until now, 300 participants have concluded the pre- and post-assessment, and 75 have reached the end of the study. Of the whole sample, around 65% are naive users. So as you can imagine, this study is generating a very large amount of data that could fill several presentations. This is the study with most participants ever, in the ayahuasca study with most participants ever. So let me show you this general result with you. This graph contains a lot of information, but here you can see the scores on the psychological health scale of one questionnaire developed by the World Health Organization to assess quality of life. So to assess quality of life, yes. And as you can see, all the groups show a significant improvement after the ayahuasca retreat that are maintained in the 3 months follow-up. But the grief and post-traumatic stress disorder group shows the sharpest curve. In the case of grief, the scores even overpass the scores of the healthy individuals, but later, after that, decrease markedly. And something similar happened with the post-traumatic stress group, which is the group with shows us the greatest differences between scores. So these preliminary results could indicate the high potential of ayahuasca for these 2 disorders, but also maybe the needed to complement with another kind of psychotherapy in order to maintain the benefits over time. Well, I'm going to focus this talk in the grief results because even though grief is a nearly universal experience affecting clinical and non-clinical population, as far as I know, this is the first prospective study to explore the effects of one psychoactive substance in this kind of process. These are the words of one participant. Ayahuasca showed me the interconnectedness of the universe and all life. The experiences showed me that death is not to be feared. Well, here you can see the demographic data of the 46 participants who conclude the pre-assessment. And as you can see, most of them were non-religious and have lost a first-degree relative an average of 4 years ago. 61% had made psychotherapy, have attended psychotherapy in the past. 30% have taken medication, and 23% had taken ayahuasca in the past in order to help cope with their grief. All of them affirm that the ayahuasca at the Temple of the Way of Life have a positive impact in their grief process, and 85% mention that the issue of their grief was clearly addressed during ceremonies. These participants say, I cried and cried, which is something that I could not do in the last 2 years since my mom died. And I felt a relief inside, like a heavy weight had been lifted up from my navel and liver areas. About half of participants mentioned to have an experience of confrontation with their grief an emotional confrontation with their grief, and the positive impact emerging from this kind of experience, the emotional release. The emotional confrontation is at the heart of the majority of intervention protocols for unresolved grief. And they use techniques such as the imaginal revisiting, retelling the narrative of the death, exposure, or writing disclosure. These techniques are used to help to process emotions and feelings and promoting mastery of difficult material. You can see the impact of this kind of experience in the psychopathological symptoms in this table. As you can see, almost all the symptoms shows an improvement after the retreat that are maintained in the 3 months follow-up. But the only 4 symptoms that scored higher than normal population in the pre-assessment are depression, somatization, anxiety, and paranoid ideation. And only the depression symptom, the improvement after the retreat is not maintained in the follow-up. So we have to wait until the end of the study in order to see how these symptoms evolve, and after that to interpret well these results. 2 of the psychological mechanisms underlying this emotional regulation are assessed in this study. The acceptance and action questionnaire showed a significant improvement in the acceptance of emotions and thoughts and memories hard to deal with. And this is a process especially relevant for those with prolonged grief disorder, which is characterized by an avoidance of the lost reminders because of the painful feelings that it causes. Once these feelings are faced during ceremonies, are easier to deal with them afterwards. So this is what we assess with the second questionnaire, the Descending Scale, that show a significant improvement in the ability to detach their own thoughts and feelings. These 2 processes are very well described in the report of this woman. She said, "The ayahuasca felt like it ran through my body and broke open any areas where my grief had been stored and had been growing into something that I could not manage on my own. I had suppressed so many tears, and I was finally able to release emotions and feelings that I did not release when my mother passed away 4 years ago. Now I am free to love her and appreciate her life because my grief does not cloud me like it did. Now I am able to better navigate my emotions and to see them as passerbys." Other areas where we see a significant improvement after the retreat that are maintained in the follow-up are related with the enrichment of the social relationships. We see commonly reference to the importance of the love in the interaction with others and the appreciation of the simple moments with their family and friends more. And related with the physical health, we see an improvement of the quality of sleep and the somatic pain, and also is commonly to see reference about to feeling more energetic, more alive, and even the necessity to improve their diet, such as eating alive food. And regarding the psychological health, I would like to highlight the experiences where the feelings of guilt are removed and forgiveness is found. This woman who lost her husband said, "I was able to forgive him for all the bad things he'd done, and I was able to forgive myself for the part I had played during our relationship." Forgiveness to oneself and to the others has a key role in some grief processes, especially in those where there was an ambiguous relationship with the disease. However, the scientific literature about grief and forgiveness is scarce, not being a therapeutical objective of any protocol of intervention now. Maybe because forgiveness is something very difficult to promote in psychotherapy, but it seems that under the ayahuasca effects, it could happen in a natural way. And let me show you the principal results in the questionnaire of the Texas Revised Inventory of Grief to assess the acceptance of the loss and the emotional and cognitive responses, grief responses. As you can see, there is an improvement after the ayahuasca retreat that are maintained in the 3 months follow-up. However, the scores in the pre-assessment are within the normal range of people who have lost their loved one between 6 months and 10 years prior. That is the case of our sample. However, the scores after the retreat far exceeds this range. So we ask ourselves, how is possible such an improvement? And maybe this report of one mother who has lost her child could answer in part this question. She said, I have a direct contact with my son. I could talk with him again, and he told me all the love and care he still has for me. Now I feel he's part of me. The lost feeling diminished because now the separation doesn't exist. Several years ago, the paradigm of grief changed, and the continuing bonds with the deceased shift to be seen as something pathological, to be seen as a key role for grief recovery. The ability to internalize the presence of the deceased and to maintain a connection with him allows the griever to live as if her loved one could see its sunrise through her eyes. Could you understand the therapeutical impact that these kind of experiences have on personal growth? The most successful intervention protocols try to get this using techniques such as the imaginal dialogue with the deceased, or writing of letters to the deceased, or the empty chair. But as you can imagine, none of these techniques have the therapeutical impact that these kind of experiences have. For this mother, the opportunity to reconnect with her son is priceless. Every year, 2.5 million of people died only in this country, and each death affects an average of 5 people. So in this moment, there are more than 12 million people grieving a loved one just in the US. And next year, there will be more fathers, more mothers, more children and grandparents in the same situation. In these moments, our non-religious part of the society also yearns for a connection with their transcendent self. But we don't have temples where cry and pray for those we lost. We don't have sacred places for honoring our ancestors. We don't have ceremonies, neither sacraments, to connect with this spiritual dimension that we need to face death. But maybe, only maybe, this study could be a first little step to inspire others like yourself to advance along this line and together create a new culture of facing death and transforming life. Thank you. Thank you to all the research team and to Ben and the ICER Foundation, to Amanda, the Beckel Foundation, Matthew, the Temple of the Way of Light, and all the donors, all participants that have been this study possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Débora. We're going to take 5 minutes of questions, so if you want to line up here for your questions. For the camera people, do you prefer the questions here or on the other side? Is here fine? Okay, here then. Please, say your name and your question.
Hi. I'll hold it. Okay. Hi, my name is Eva, and in going to a couple of these rooms and hearing people talk, it sounds like some of the recommendations are to use ayahuasca once. Some are to use it once a week. For depression, every 7 days. I'm kind of confused as to how long you may experience benefits from a single experience, and is it necessary to repeat it?
If I am not sure if I understand you very well. That you are asking me that how much is the best quantity of ayahuasca sessions that you have to make?
Yeah, like, can you just do it once, or do you have to use it every 6 weeks for a year?
Yes.
Or
Well, I think that this is very personal.
is there too much? Can you overdo it?
I don't think that maybe, o sea, that something is too much, no? I think that that is very personal, and I only recommend it at least make more than one.
Oh, you do?
Well, this is my experience. I am talking about my experience, but more than one because maybe in the first one you can't feel the effects, or you are worried for any questions, and to make a second challenge, it could be a nice possibility, no?
But so for this study, was it something that people used a number of times?
They used to take between 5 and 8 times. There is an average of 7 times, so it's a very hard experience, not hard, intensive experience.
Débora, I have a question for you, if you don't mind, if it's too personal. Why did you come up with this research idea? Why ayahuasca and grief?
Well, I have two persons that I love and died, and for me, my ayahuasca experience helped me a lot, to connect with these people and to release emotions, and also to find peace in myself. So I think that the grief is a problem that is not explored because the death is a taboo in our society, and now we are putting a light in this problem, and I think that ayahuasca, the vine of death, could have a very important impact in this kind of experiences, and that is for everyone. We are not, the most of us are non-religious, and we need to connect with our spiritual dimension to face death.
Do we have more questions? Don't be shy.
Hi, I'm Alex. I'm a researcher myself, and I think one of the criticisms that we constantly hear is the internal validity of the studies that we're presenting and whether they're rigorous enough or not. So I guess my question is, how can we have a study that doesn't have self-selection bias? Like, I have done ayahuasca myself. I've benefited tremendously from it, but I decided to do it because I was aware of the benefits, right? Mm-hmm. How can we make sure that these benefits can extrapolate it to people that might not have that already level of consciousness, mm-hmm. and that they don't think about psychedelics as a way of grieving? How can we include them in a clinical trial, mm-hmm. for example? And then second question is, you didn't talk at all about harm. You mentioned it at the beginning, but you didn't present any results, and I would love to hear what were like the most distressing and challenging situations that were presented for the participants.
Yes, I didn't focus on because I didn't have time, no? But we see something very interesting, that is we only receive 4 surveys with people telling that they have a negative impact in their psychopathological symptoms. And all of them have the same personality profile, that is high neuroticism, low agreeableness, and low consciousness. This personality profile is known as under-regulate control profile, something like this. I don't remember very well, but this is characterized for people who used to interpret the ambiguous stimulus as negative, are very, are easily angered and used to focus their anger in others, and this profile correlates with paranoid and overall with borderline disorders. So it's for sure that there are other factors that are contributing that they have a negative impact of this experience, because there are an amount of 20 participants in total with the same profile, and only there are 4 people who have this negative impact. But this proportion is significant, you know, so it's a point to take into account. And regarding the first question, that was that how can include it, you know, these people? Well, I think that only in the random clinical trials we can explore this. Well, we can avoid this bias, no, that are inherent of the observational studies.
Like, how do you offer a placebo for something that you know has tremendous effects, like anything from purging to like psychedelic and hallucinations? Like, how do you offer someone a placebo that is not ayahuasca, but is going to make them feel like that in order to believe that they got maybe ayahuasca, right? It's so complicated.
Yeah, it's complicated, yes. Now we are conducting a research study in order to give ayahuasca to people with grief, complicated grief, and also with holotropic breathwork. We have permissions to assess 8 people with holotropic breathwork and 8 with ayahuasca. It could be a comparative way, yes, but we are seeing that with holotropic breathwork, they have the same kind of experiences that ayahuasca had with another textures and intensity, no? But the integration of the experience are really similar. So we could have a...
Well, and I want to thank Débora and remind the public that Débora is part of iSeers. iSeers is a nice NGO that has been doing wonderful work in the area of psychedelics, and iSeers has a booth in the marketplace. I invite you to visit iSeers booth and also attend the marketplace, which is a space that is free. You don't have to pay to get in. You can invite colleagues from the area that were not able to get their tickets to come. And also I want to remind that iSeers is presenting a series of presentations here, and specifically one of the programs of iSeers, the Ayahuasca Defense Fund, will be showing a series of presentations in this ballroom, in this junior room next. So with that, I thank you and invite our next speaker. Thank you, Débora.
Thank you.